in your life. And some memories are actually sort of still being written because they're actually being shaped today. Whatever it is, today is another opportunity to have a memory that can actually shape you and actually help develop you and develop me. And the Bible paints this picture of memories. And as you read through the scriptures and you start hunting and start delving in a bit, you start to realize that memories are actually meant to be spiritual active disciplines. Spiritual active disciplines that you allow to shape you in your day. And they're not just things that happen. They just don't pop into your head for no reason because that's the way you're designed. A bit like if you think, if you've been reading your Bible, you might remember that when they crossed the Jordan River, they built up some stones. And it was a memory that they were always to recall. And then you'd find maybe when, Jesus in Last Supper breaks bread and gives them the wine, he's saying, I've got a memory here for you. You were here. I want you to remember this memory. Because he wants to inspire, he wants to encourage, he wants to help people. And sometimes we make it so religious that we miss the point. And memories are really important for you and I. I think probably because we're wired, we tend to hold on to the negative ones. And we don't think of maybe some of the lessons that are inherent in them. But memories are ever so important to you and I. You see, God calls us, you and I, to live in a moment and carry our memories forward. To live in the moment, to live in this present moment, but to take the memory of this day and carry it forward so that we're always learning to make memories. Say, make memories. So I want to probably come to you and just address this whole idea of memories in the making. Say, memories in the making. You see, today you'll make a small decision. Today hopefully someone will make a small act of obedience toward the Lord. Some people will trust God in a promise, and they're all crafting a memory that shapes you for the present day, and it shapes your faith for the future. That's what memories are about. If you're wondering why your head's stuffed full of all these crazy thoughts, memories, and things that happen, because God designed them in order that you could say, hey, I'm going to have faith for tomorrow and for my future. And that's why memories are there. So I want us just to have a quick look in 2 Kings 19:30. I just read this. It's sort of connected and not connected to where I'm going, but I think it's a hope that you and I can catch hold of. And it says this. And the surviving remnant, it's talking about Israel, and the surviving remnant of the house of Judah, what do you hear? Shall again take root downward. Shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. And as I thought about that, I thought, wow, what a vision. If you can remember when you started to put roots downward, and God says, I want you to bear fruit upward. And it tells me in Psalm 92, it says, those that are connected, who are planted in the house of the Lord. In other words, those who put roots down, all of a sudden, they're going to prosper, they're going to grow, and they're showing fruit upward. And if you're a person here today that says, I want to bear fruit for Jesus. Anybody here like that? Yes. So the only way you're going to do that is you put roots downward in order that you put fruit upward. And as I read it, I thought, Lord, that's just caught my heart, just that idea. And I thought, Lord, let me go a little deeper. And I wasn't saying, God, come in deeper. It says, Lord, let me dig a bit deeper. Let me go a bit further down to put my roots down further in you, to know you so I can bear fruit upward. Does that make sense to you? So today we're going to look at who memories are for, what memories do, or what we should do with memories, or do memories have value? That's an important question. And probably you can guess the answers, but we've been looking at 1 Samuel 17, David fighting Goliath. Did anybody actually read 1 Samuel 17? Stand up, you people that read it. Stand up, please. You are my heroes. Don't be stand up now, you didn't have your hand up. You are my... Okay, stand up again. Turn around, look at all the naughty people. Go ahead, look at the people that didn't do it. You want to get a handle on it because your memory's not good enough because you hadn't made enough memories about 1 Samuel 17. Some people have been coming and saying, I never seen that. I forgot that. I done it. Do you know what I mean? And that's why when we say, let's just take a race through this because it's jam-packed with life. So if you haven't read it, you know, I hope you're going to follow along with where we're going today. That's a wee bit cheeky, isn't it? My wife wouldn't have told me to do that like this. She wouldn't have. But I mean, if you're looking at a giant that's just appeared, like Goliath just appeared, just come out of the ranks of a Philistine army and started to challenge, started to shout. And I mean, you got to look at that memory and how this story just pans out. And whether it's a giant or a storm or a giant storm or a storm that looks like a giant or just a problem, you know, it's really good to dig down and just look at this. So let me just kick this off, because when we're talking about making memories and or memories in the making, should I say, memories are for you and for others. Memories are there for you and they're for others. They're not solely just for you. It's not God give you a memory of something that happened. God gave memories for you and for others. And David, when he found himself about to become a slayer of giants, as he faced down Goliath, he realized he was called to do that and be a slayer in his life at that moment. And in 1 Samuel 17, and verse 34, I'm going to read the 37. Let's just have a look at what it says. And it says this: But David said to Saul, this is when he meets the king, King Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear, and it took a lamb from the flock, I went after him, and I struck him, and then delivered him out of his mouth. And he arose against me, and if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them. Goliath's going to be like one of them, for he has defiled the armies of the living God. So we're getting the picture, yeah? Okay. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. I kind of find this kind of shocking and striking and exciting and so many other things just jam-packed in this simple statement. And as I'm looking at it, this is what I see. I see a young man going in, a teenager, standing in front of a king, and the king's looking at him, and he wants to give him his armor, and he wants to dress him up. And he starts off, the king, as you know, we've checked this out. He says, you're only a wee lad. How are you going to fight this big lad? In Northern Ireland speak. He's saying, you're only a nipper. This guy's been training for war all his life. But here we have David, and the first thing he thinks to say, hey, I've got this memory. I remember when this big nasty bear came at me, I knocked his pan in, and when the lion came, I took him by the beard, swung around my head, beat him up, and took a lamb out of his mouth. He had this whole story to tell Saul. He starts to focus in on a memory. It's the first thing that he does. And you know, when God has placed memories in your life from the day and hour that he saved you and rescued you, he said, let me just get a memory into you about how I worked in your life, how I delivered you, how I saved you. And here, when David's looking to slay a giant, he starts backing up. I better get the right memory because I'm getting into battle. And see, so often when the giant rises up, we're thinking about the giant rather than about the memory. So God's equipped you. God's given you arrows in your quiver. He's given you a sword to be able to deal with an enemy. And it starts with them for murder or for a memory of to deal with this giant. Just saying. But here it was where God had already equipped him. And David started to declare, I'm going to fight the giant. That's the first time you hear him say, I'm going to fight this giant. I'm going to take this out because his memory starts to inspire something, and it inspires him to declare what he's going to do. And I want you to connect your memory to a declaration and understanding, hey, here's the steps that have been laid out for me, how to deal with this devil and this giant that's come out. And he declared this intent to fight. And I understand it's laughable when you think of a boy going against a trained warrior. I mean, it's a bit daft. You think, wise up. But that's what's happening. And here's the thing I want you to catch hold of. Have you ever had a victory? Ever one victory with Jesus? Just one, just a tiny one. One of the greatest ones I ever had in my life. And it wasn't casting out demons, and it wasn't seeing people being healed supernaturally. It wasn't seeing, it was stop biting my nails. Being serious. I am being absolutely serious. I eat my nails right down to my elbows, you know that way? Can't get my elbow up there anymore. And God, the Lord said to me one day, stop doing that. Instantly. Something that was so habitual that I was caught with. And I know it seems so insignificant, but it left that moment, and I was so shocked about the power of God. He retrained my mind, and you sort of go to bite the nail, and that hurt. Sort of. But all of a sudden, everything sort of changed, and I didn't even think about it. And from that day to this day, I've never done it again, and I can't even put it together. I don't know how it stopped. And if you've ever been caught with something, a habit that you can't stop, when Jesus speaks, things change. And I know it's a wee bit random, you might think that, but listen, it just felt so powerful in my life. I've seen a lot of things that the Lord's done, but if you remember the past, to grab a victory. And that's what David was doing. He was already stockpiling up in his mind his memories actually to take himself into victory. He got a personal experience of armament. It's a bit like he was putting on his medals. And if you've ever done any type of service, and after duty and just looking at the back of the room, and you put your medals on when this is when I fought here, this is when I fought there, and that's what David's doing. He's remembering the bear and the lion. And by the way, it wasn't just one bear and one lion. It was a clatter of wild animals that he was used to dealing with. And he starts to flow them past his mind in order that he can go into battle. And the amazing thing, I don't know what. Does anybody remember what Goliath said? Why he was fighting, why he wanted a one-on-one? Help me. Anybody that actually read 1 Samuel 17 and remembers? Come on. Okay. Thank you. Who was that said that? Oh, yes, that was right. So there's just one death. Would that be right, Roy? Just one death. So that there wouldn't be so many people that you must have read it, Roy. I didn't see your hand up earlier. But when I think about it, he said, well, we're going down here to have a battle so there isn't a massacre, but there's only one death. Now, Saul was doubting this young boy, but all of a sudden something happens when he starts to bring up these memories. Something swayed the doubts that were in Saul's heart, the king's heart, when he looked at this youth. Something changed that made him say this: I'm going to let the boy fight. Now, the other part of you didn't want a lot of people to die. I want you to understand this. The king was saying this: I'm going to put all in with you, David. Everything that I have. The whole of Israel rests on whether you win here. The agreement was, Goliath said, if I win, Israel will serve me. If you win, we will serve you. And the king was saying, no, I need someone stronger. But at some point, when he started to pull up memories, something of the presence of God must have touched Saul. When he swung right round and says, I'm swayed here. This guy, there's something about this lad. I can feel a presence as he's standing here telling me about his victories and what God done. To the point where he was ready to say, well, do you know what? Go you and fight for all of Israel. We're behind you. And I find that just, I can't even work that out. He starts to account his history. And all of a sudden, Saul gets swayed to say, let's get behind this young lad. There's something about him that makes him so special. And this is what I want to say, and I want you to catch hold of. He lets the boy fight, and I know we'll have underdog stories. But when you've pitched everything in, I mean, you must be quaking and doing a bit of shaking when you realize this wee lad's the way to fight a giant. And if this giant wins, we're for it. Our necks are on the line. So everybody there that day must have been quaking when they watched the wee boy go out. It must have been, I want you to catch the weight of this when they let him go, when the king said, go. Go. Something must have just caught him in his heart. And this is what I want to say. In memories, there's an inherent power when you start to talk about past victory. There's an inherent power when you talk about past victory. When you start to declare, I remember God did. There's something that supernaturally becomes released into your life. There's something that will take you over when you shouldn't be going over. There's something that will cause you to rise up and be stirred up as an underdog to take the big guy. If you only but stop and just think for a minute, if I remember and take hold of the memory that God supernaturally placed on the inside of me, I can run forward. I can charge this giant. I can be bold, and we've talked so many times about what he said and so on and so forth. But maybe that's you today, and you're looking at a devil, or you're looking at an enemy, or you're looking at a circumstance, or you're looking at something's kind of just didn't turn out the way you thought. And I'm saying, start making memories today. But remember the memories where you had victory, because that's the thing where God's going to release power through for you. It's not about, oh, God, help me win this. God said, no, wrong way. Go back to where I trained you. Go back to where I spoke to you. Go back to where I put that memory of victory in your heart so you'd remember who I am in the midst. Does that make sense to you? Not your face, no. But I mean, somewhere we got to just catch hold of this and realize this. Whether it's the 11th hour, you know, there's something about God says, get that memory, it's a do it again moment. That memory is about a do it again moment. If you keep rehearsing the memories of victory, as God said, I can do it again. I can do it again. I will do it again. I can do it again. That was me, and I can do that again. Let's go for it. There's something he's looking to stir up. He's trying to stir up the fire within you, even though it's your job. Paul said to Timothy, stir up the fire within you. Do it. And there's something about memories, and God says, stir up that fire. Why? Start thinking about what I placed in you. I mean, if we just stop for a minute and think about it, you know, you can either live with a standard in your whole life of failure, or you can live with the standard of victory. And it's all about what you allow to be in your head and in your noggin, and what you think about when you wake up in the morning. And you think, oh, I'm going to remember. You like that word, noggin? I've seen your lips move. But somewhere, when you wake up in the morning, you're either starting your day off with defeat or victory. It starts there in the morning. That's why we say we will seek him early in the morning. When you get your head right, you get your stuff together. Jesus trusted the whole kingdom to a few wee lads, a few wee muckers. I said muckers, just in case somebody's listening and don't understand. Few wee muckers, wee lads that were running about the street. He says, hey, come here, you wee fishermen, wee smelly man. All sorts of people, he said, I'm going to entrust my kingdom, everything about heaven, on you. Now, what was that? And then he says, come with me and I'm going to minister. And he showed them the miraculous. He starts walking on water. He does so many different things. But he started with just these memories to sink into them. There was a time when David, this young warrior, after he had battled Goliath, he was encamped in a place called Ziklag. And I'm sure many of you remember it. And his wife was taken. You know, they were out fighting and getting on like hellions, as people do. And he left the camp in Ziklag unguarded. And the Philistines came down. They took wife, sons, daughters, and so on and so forth. I'm talking about the value of memory here. 1 Samuel 30:6. Let me just go to it here. And all the men are gathered around. They start saying, let's stone David, because they're weeping. They've lost everything. He's a bad leader. And they're really caught up. I just want to read you one verse. Verse 6, and David was greatly distressed. When you're going to get stoned, you get distressed, all right? Just in case you're wondering. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord. And I can't help but believe that David thought about Goliath and a bear and a couple of battles and a couple of things where he thought he was going down. And he thought, now hold on a minute, I remember who God is. This is where Henry lives, by the way. Henry always goes back and remembers. Henry will often say to me, and it's great, and Henry will say to me, he'll come in just every now and again, he'll sit in the office and say, Lewis. I say, what, Henry? Look where God's brought all us. Look at this building. We could never imagine this. And we couldn't have. And then Ruth played it out today. Oh, it's freaky. And he lives in making memories, and remembering and bringing them up. And it's such an encouragement when someone does. Do you remember? And every time he says it, I want to slap him. But I don't, because it's always encouraging. Do you remember this? And I go, yeah, I do. And sometimes it's so important to make memories for battle. Make your memories for battle. That's about the first time I ever encouraged you, Henry, isn't it? Look where JVC is now. It just gives you a future hope. If you can remember the past, you've got a future hope that will live on the inside of you, because memory brings encounter. Memory brings encounter. Memories are full packed with you encountering him, and that's why they're so important for your heart and for my heart and for all our hearts. They bring encounter, they release courage, they give strategic plans. They help us recover, like David recovered everything that was taken. All people get revived when the right memories come up. In fact, they allow you to access grace and power. That's what memories do, because they charge you, they open the door, they give you away simply by remembering God's faithfulness and how he has helped us. And I would say at this point just today, if you would recalibrate your mind back to the memory that's got the most power in it for you when you're doing life, wherever you're at, get back to that line and say, here's it here. Here's the one that he charged me with to be able to charge forward, because it's important. The past memory brings strength to the present moment. Your past brings strength to the present. And I know lots of times we don't think much about the past, because a lot of times we put it in the negative and you can't go forward with a rear view mirror and all that, which is also true. But here's the flip side of it, where you start to realize that, hey, the past memory of God's power working in your life will bring strength to your present moment. And I have a question, because I like to have questions. My question, what comes first when you see a giant? Faith or fear? What comes first into your mind when you see a giant? I can get 99.9% of you down on that one. Faith or fear? Faith or fear? What catches us first? Is it intimidation or celebration? Is it intimidation or celebration when you see a giant? Which one is it? I'm going to talk on Wednesday night. Just come into my head there. Why I need enemies. Right, that's it, done out of the way. But you need an enemy. You need to come on here Wednesday night, but you need to understand what your enemies are all about. But here's something. Faith or fear, what comes first? Intimidation or celebration? Because most pain comes through your mistake or my mistake or the people around us. And somewhere we need to stop and just think about where the pain's coming from. It certainly isn't God sent. And we need to allow the memories to empower us or to be powerful memories in the present pain, where you think, hey, I've got a memory that will outstrip this pain that I'm looking at, or the threat of this enemy. So plan not to forget. I know we've talked about this several times, and I've talked about it, Roy's talked about it, other people have talked about it. Plan not to forget your testimony. Plan not to forget your testimony. In Revelations 12, verse 11, you'll get up, and I'm going to just read verse 10 first, I think. And when you hear just what it says when it talks about fighting and overcoming, where did I say it was? Is it still in Revelations 12? Yeah. And this is, what do you hear? John's writing this. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now, at this moment, the salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. At this moment. What moment is it? For the accuser of the brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them night and day before God. What do you hear? And they have conquered him. This accuser, by the blood of the Lamb, by Jesus dying and giving, sacrificing his life, by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony. For they loved their lives, not even unto death. And here it is, where it's all packed into a powerful punch. He says, hey, here it comes. This testimony of what happened in the past is the thing that empowers you to go into your future. Does that make sense? All of a sudden you realize, when I'm thinking about the cross of Christ and what Jesus done, he's saying, this is the thing that deals with the devil who's coming tomorrow. This is the thing that deals with your devil that you're looking at today, or the enemy. He is actually telling us he wants you to learn. You see, the Hebrew word in the Old Testament, when it's talking about testimony, it means simply, literally, do it again. That's what it means. It means do it again. That's the word that they use in the Hebrew, do it again. So it said they overcame them because God done it again. They bore witness and God done it again. So this is some perpetual, they keep overcoming by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So it calls you to call the remembrance what's going on in order that you can move forward and deal with every enemy that's rapping on your door. Testimony is the mark of a relationship. Testimony is you saying, "Would you hear what my big brother done?" Testimony is a mark of relationship and the authority of God. A testimony, when you're testifying what God done, is a fighting weapon. It's your chief weapon that you have in your armament that you can pull out. I remember, I haven't forgotten. This is who God is, and this is who I am in him. And I've got the blood of the Lamb, and I've got the word of that testimony, so I'll move forward. So I'll move forward. I'll move forward. I'm not going to hang back. I'm not going to shrink back. I'm not going to flee like everyone else run that day with David. I know, and if we think about it, we're learning how to trust him, how to lean in him, to trust him in all that we know, that he done it before. Your memory, he done it before. I'll hang in this time, just once more, just this day. I'm taking hold of you today because you done it yesterday. I'm taking hold of you today because you done it last month. I'm going to take hold of you because I remember that you done this. You've got this memory that's alive. But somewhere you got to value your memory. He says, I will do it again. The one who moved in your life says, I will do it again. I'm telling you, saying, I will do it again. Whatever you're facing, he says, I'll do it again if you'll but hang out with me and remember the memory that I showed in your heart so that you can overcome whatever it is that you think is a giant in your world. I hope that really makes sense to you because it's invaluable for you. So David's looking at Goliath and he recalls, God saved me from a lion. God saved me from a bear. And God, he would sing later, God saved them from a Goliath. He refers to a past victory, to access, hear me, a future victory. He remembered a past victory to get to the door of a future victory. And if you're looking victory today, you've got to look at the doorway, and the doorway is the memory that God placed in you to move forward. Does that make sense? It's no good you trying to get another plan. God doesn't work like that. Saying, I put it over that. You've got the answer in your heart for the giant that you look at. Huh? You have the answer. You've got the door that says, answer through here. You get the memory and march through. It's already lying in there. It's not something supernatural. You don't need an angel to deliver it to you. You don't need the pastor to tell you or anybody. You just need to think, God's given me the answer in the inside by memories that he's placed in my mind and in my heart. Anybody believe that? I'm glad. I'm glad. You see, when you refer to the past, the access, the future, get into a victory, it's how to grab a repeat miracle. It's how you grab a repeat miracle. I'll tell you how that works out. Sometimes it's very simple. Many, many times when people were coming up in prayer and I would say, by his stripes you were healed. And they look at me and say, and I go, right? And they say, yeah. I said, what's that mean? They go, huh? I says, well, it means that he's already done it. Do you believe that? Yes, I believe it. Boom, healed. I said, that was interesting. I'll go back up and I'll say that again because there was a miracle. I think I'll try and grab that. Because if you do it, I have a testimony now of someone, when I quoted the word, they stood on it and got through. So I'll do it again, and the same thing happened. Boom. And you start to see, hey, the memory of that one, 10 seconds later, a bit like a goldfish may. So I'm standing there 10 seconds and I go, I wonder, okay, let's trust his word. Let's say it. I've seen the experience. Boom, happens again. And you're saying, well, there's always happening again. That's okay. Knock yourself out. But there's something inherent in a memory when it comes to the Lord. So this is what I want to say to you. Mark the moments. Mark the moments. Memories in the making. Memories are for you and for others. Mark the moments. Mark the moments that you're going through, because the encounter that you have, mark it. Don't just let it slip by. Mark the moment. There was an encounter. That's important to me. You mightn't understand it. You might be able to work it out. But see, in 30 or 40 years, boom, one day it'll just come. Mark your moment. Mark the moments. Trust takes time when you're trusting Jesus. You don't get there overnight. It takes a long time, because Lord brings a process to your walk and your journey. And I want to go to a story that is very familiar, but it kind of fits in with where we're at. And it's, I'm going to go to Mark 4. The disciples are sailing. They were all singing that song. What was it? We are, that's the very one now. They were all singing, we are sailing, and they get into the boat and away they go across the sea. And there's a storm. As it was in the Lake of Galilee, and these well-hardened fishermen were panicking, experienced. So that tells you, it's a bad storm. So we get it. It's a bad storm. And Jesus is snoring in the back, or sleeping in the back. He's got his head on a cushion. He's got himself comfortable. And I said, boys, knock yourselves out. I'm going to lie down and asleep. And, of course, the storm comes, so they get into accusation mode. They start to think, well, hey, hold on a minute. I don't like the look of this. I'm going to read the text. We'll just get here, and I better change up a gear here. Mark 4:35, and it says this. On that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat. Just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. And they woke him, and they said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? And he awoke, and he rebuked the wind, and he said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear, and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Fear reveals something when they were in the boat, and this is what it reveals. The fear revealed, think about fear. Anybody seen anybody in fear? Fear is a product of forgetting who Jesus is. So Jesus is in the back of the boat sleeping on a cushion, and they start to see a storm, and they get all panicking and sort of worked up, and they get fear in their life because they forget who he is. And that's what it reveals when you feel fear touching you, knocking on the door. You see, the key is, well, I'm not opening that door. I'm going to go to the answer door. I remember. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And you learn how to avoid that. But you see, fear caused them to forget who Jesus was. They forgot his miracles. They forgot what he taught. They forgot the love that he had. And the thing that you and I need to learn when we're thinking about giants, you're always going to meet a giant when you're on the road or the pathway of obedience. If you want to be an obedient Christian, there's a giant waiting on you. What if I don't go down the path? There's a bigger one. That will imprison you. That will torture you. So you got to stop for a minute and think there's something to laugh here. You see, here's the thing. In verse 35, Jesus gets up and says, hey, we're going to the other side. He didn't say we're going to half get there. He didn't say, well, I hope to get there. Well, I'll pray to the Father that I get there. He said, we are going. It was a command. Get in the boat. We're doing this. So when Jesus looks at you and he looks at me and he says, this is what we're doing, it's not a discussion. He's not saying, hey, what do you think, guys? He's saying, this is what we're doing it now, and his word is kind of like that. This is what we're doing. I mean, you can have 150,000 different reasons why not to do it, but when he makes the command, he says, nothing's stopping me. I've decided to cross this lake. Let us go there, done, dusted. And sometimes when we read the Word of God, we're thinking to ourselves, well, you know, maybe it doesn't work like that. Well, I don't see it like that. Well, I remember somebody saying this. Well, there's this guy preached this. I read a book about that. But when Jesus says we're crossing over, you cross over. So when he says you're a giant slayer, he's not saying you might be, you could be, nothing. He's saying you are what I said you are. Well, whom I called you to be is who you are. You mightn't feel like it. You mightn't run out of devil. You mightn't run out of giant. But it doesn't change who I made you to be. Nearly got excited. Here's another thing. When he said, let's go to the other side, Jesus knew fine well they were going into a storm. He knew it. And when Jesus says, do you deny certain things, he knows what's coming. But remember what he said. He said, no, we're going to cross this. But he knows what's coming. In fact, when you think about it, suppose in a way Jesus said, let's go to the other side. He planned it. He planned it. He had planned it because Jesus wasn't frightened of storms and he wasn't frightened of giants. And I think we're called to be the same. And I think we've got every capability to deal with a giant. And if you read the whole story, as we did, you realize he didn't take them around the storm. He didn't pull into a port and say, let's hang out until we get some peace. He says, no, I'm going to take you straight through this. Because that's the only way to deal with your fear and the giant or whatever. He said, no, we're just going to go through it. He wasn't trying to duck. He wasn't trying to get out of the way. He wasn't trying to avoid. He says, we're going straight through this, guys, because this is where we're safe. Another thing I'll just pick up when I'm thinking about it because of another hour to do here. And Jesus was full of peace, right? Jesus brought peace. Jesus is the one that brings peace. How come he works a miracle and the storm stops and it's at peace? The sea's calm. And what are the disciples doing? They're scared to death. Jesus, the Son of Righteousness, the King of Salem or the King of Peace, is there in the boat with them and they're petrified. How does that work? Because he's here today and some of us have got fears as big as a mountain. How does it work? You can be sitting right side beside and arm round and worshiping and kissing on the face the King of Peace and you're petrified. How does that work? Because he's the one that brings peace. Yet the disciples were petrified. In fact, it says, now all of a sudden the great fear. They weren't frightened of the storm, they're frightened of Jesus. How does that work? What's broken in their head? But I just thought I would say about it, but what's it mean? I've no idea. But anyway, the other thing that I learned when I'm looking at this, I realized a past victory is always available in a present crisis because it'll give you courage to face the storm because Jesus always equips you and I to handle every storm. And he actually turns to the disciples and he rebukes them for not acting like a slayer, not dealing with it. He says, have you no faith? Now, for the sake of time, but we know faith is the evidence of things what? hope for? So he's saying this, have you no hope? Well, where would you get hope? You get hope in the memory because you remember God done it before and there's the testimony. And he's looking at them and said, have you got no hope in your heart that you can actually overcome this storm? Is there nothing you can figure out in your mind when I worked miracles, when I multiplied the bread? What is wrong? Have you no memory to chase back to realize that I have fitted you and I've equipped you with so many memories? Have you no hope or have you no faith? Have you know, when you change the faith to hope and you realize, because faith and hope, they're just tied together, and you realize that it's like the blueprint because of the memory that he's put in your head for you to move forward. And they seem to have missed it. They've no evidence of hope. They've no evidence because they've forgotten it. They haven't marked the moment, and they tell me that the safest place in the storm is beside who? Jesus. And that means you're not trying to avoid it. You're trying to go through it with him. You want him to navigate you through the storm because he commands storms. Maybe God's calling you to command the storm. And I know that there's times, well, I'm going to share something in a minute and hopefully I'll get this out. But anyway, maybe you feel like Jesus doesn't care. Maybe you're at a place where you think you're not going to survive. Or that's, by the way, for me, that's discipleship mode. Oh, we're not going to work. He doesn't care about us. We're being betrayed. There's no hope in the boat. He's asleep. Or you've been praying to God. You know that prayer that you pray and it's silent? And then you say, oh, the heavens are like brass. What a lot of rubbish. They're not like brass for you and me. That's madness. He lives inside your heart. He's part of us. He's a God that's never abandoning. So when we're talking like that, it's Old Testament stuff that you haven't got the living Christ on the inside of you and me. And sometimes throw up John 16:33 for me, Gwen, please. And I've said these things, Jesus says, said what? I'm telling you all these promises because you got a lot coming if you back up and read John 16. That in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome all the world's systems and how they want to pull people down because I have equipped you with a different way to manage this fight and this giant. I've equipped you and I've helped you. Many of you know and remember last year, I think it was in October, that Storm Milton came and they were shouting Category 5 in Florida. Is that where we were, Glenn? Is it Florida? Aye, and we were in Florida and we were in the middle of it and the families were there and the storm was coming. And I've told you the story before, but I want to share something a bit different. And in the middle of it, when I was coming up to it, and the tornadoes would start coming in, the rain was starting to come, and I'd explained to you, even in that panicking situation, I felt somewhere that God was putting a peace in my heart as I shared with you. And I really thought, so many ways that this really was a Slayer giant storm. But I had this peace, but I needed something more because this was a killer and they're declaring it to be the worst ever to touch there. And I said, Lord, I need a word to stand on as much as I have this peace and there's so many responsibilities looking at the families that were with us. And I was thinking, wow, and you're all texting, are you okay? And I said, of course we are. But of course we were. But this is what I want to show you in Psalm 91. Jesus, in nanoseconds, I says, Lord, I've got this peace. I feel your presence. It's not enough for me. You need to speak to me from your word. And he took me straight away. I told you before he spoke 3 Psalms. Can't remember whether I shared you, but I'm going to share them this morning. And the first thing he said in Psalm 91, he says, who dwells in the shelter of the Most High when a Category 5 hurricane comes? It's going to wipe out, and people are screaming in America. He who dwells in the shelter will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And then in verse 5 it says this. This is what he said to me. You will not fear the terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day. First thing he said, do not fear this night or the arrow that comes in the morning. I said, oh, wow. And then he says, as soon as I read it, he said, in fact, he said them before I read them. And then he said, Psalm 23, verse 5. And I was like, oh, I had to look at that. And I know it. It says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. I says, wow, Lord, this is getting exciting. It feels like you're actually speaking. And then he went to Psalm. He says, Lewis, go and read Psalm 34, verse 5. And you can see the connection. Psalm 91, verse 5. Psalm 23, verse 5. Because he knows I'm not very good with memory. He says, Psalm 34, verse 5. He says, this is what you need to stand on, son, when this category 5 comes. So we got it, Psalm 34, verse 5. Sorry, wrong page. Let me just turn it over. Those who look to him, look to me, are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. In other words, he's saying, Lewis, you got to understand, don't fear the night or the day. You're okay. You don't have to worry about that. And I want you to remember, I'm setting a place for you to eat in front of your enemies. And then he just topped that up. He said, listen, you will not be ashamed if you believe what I'm saying to you right now. And at that point, I went in and, I went to the guys that were there and I said, look, this is what I believe the Lord shared with me, because we had an opportunity to go and sort of bunker down somewhere. But we sort of thought, no, this is what God said. We're going to stay in the middle of this storm. This tin hut wasn't even tin. He says, I want you to stay here. I said, well, I feel this is what the Lord shared. Boom, boom, boom. And he says, no water will enter through the door. You will not even hear the storm above your head. I'm telling you that because I want you to get to your point. You see, you got to know what Jesus is doing in the middle of a storm, because he's not sitting redundant or sleeping. He's not sort of waiting for you to cry out, so to speak. He's ready for action at all times. And I know that he points to peace and joy from his word. And he wants you to take the tools of faith and see through heaven's eyes and get your feet on the rock. So the storm comes and there was no water came through the door and there was no thunder that we heard. There was nothing. So Matthew, you can hear the wind whistling, but that was it. Matthew, the lunatic, my eldest son, gets up and he goes out in the middle of the storm. I lay in my bed and just listened. He went out, opened the door. He told me in the morning, I said, what happened? He said, well, Dad, when I was standing there, it was surreal. I said, tell me, what do you mean it was surreal? He says, well, when I was standing there, I could see the wind hitting the trees next door to us, and the wind all around us, howling and making the trees sway. I could hear noises of what was going on. But as I stood on the allotment, it was totally still. There was no tree moving. He says, I couldn't even feel the wind. But I could hear it. And I could see it when I looked at the other allotments. Not a thing. Nothing moved. And I went, wow, I wish I had went out. The next morning when we got up and we went out, don't fear the arrow at night or by day, and the next morning we went out, there were fences ripped up just around the side of us, roofs taken off, floods in the streets. Not one thing. Not one thing. Talk about a memory. Talk about a memory that God wants to use. Who pushed that clock on? Memories are worth making. Memories are worth making. Memories are worth making. They really are, guys. They're worth making. You're neither going to live, now listen to me, or die helpless. Some of you need to take that up as a promise. You're not going to live or die helpless when Jesus is your Savior. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen to you. And I know people fear and worry. I'm saying you're not going to live or die helpless. It's not going to happen. You're going to be a confident victor because you're trained to reign in this life. You need to grab the memories for the fight and whatever fight that you're in. And understand, if you're going to behead a giant, you get the security of live or die. I'm not helpless. I'm never alone. There's always one greater that's with me. And you're always safe and secure with him. You see, a giant will always take you closer to Jesus Christ if you allow it. The giant is actually pointing the way. The disciples, he was saying, why are you afraid and you've no faith? I want you to adjust your perspective because I want to empower you to cope and overcome. And see, sometimes we don't get that. Faith and fear actually do something similar. What do you mean by that? Well, they do something that they can't really see. They believe. Faith believes in disaster when fear believes in the disaster while faith believes in the future. Fear wants to fix things and thinks they can fix things, but faith will take you to the source of the fixer. Fear draws down accusations from this world, where faith will always draw down heaven's resource of his word that actually stabilizes you and I. And they still look into the unseen, but they pull different things out. So think about it. There's no giant, no storm that can change the purpose of God ever, ever, ever. Listen, God is always bigger than the storm that rages. He's always bigger than the giant. And after the storm of this one that we read in Mark 4, can I tell you what Jesus done? When they arrived at the other side, he says, I'm going over there. Why did he go over there? Well, I'm going to tell you why he went over there. When he got over there, he met a man that was demonized by hundreds of demons, and legion, maybe thousands, and he freed him. He went over because he was going to bring freedom to someone. Then he met a woman with an issue of blood for 12 years, whom he healed instantly. Then he went on a little bit and he found another guy, Jairus, and his daughter had just died, and he healed her. And you realize that the giant that you faced on the other side of it is victory after victory after victory after victory. There was so many things to display if they just go through this storm with faith in their hearts. A storm never seems good, but when you look at what happens after it, it's a different thing that happens. It stirs courage for battle. If Jesus is in your boat, or if you're in his boat, you'll make it to the other side, because that's your next level of anointing where God's going to work. You see, it's one thing to have the God of peace in your heart, but it's another to have the God of peace leading your life. See, he'll always be in your heart, but when he's leading your life, everything changes. Everything looks different. It's a different color, a different shape. You've got to remember who Jesus is. He's the God of miracles. He's the God of breakthrough. And if we just remember to continue to totally every day just expect him to turn up in a miraculous way, life changes. The disciples forgot for a moment, fell in to fear. Where's the worship team? You're not up here. I'm just waiting on you guys. Thank you. A giant will appear from yesterday that you thought you killed. It'll come from yesterday, it'll be there today. And simple things sort of spiral for people out of control. But if you remember who Jesus is, yesterday's memory will bring you today's victory. You've got to just get that. He's not failed us. He's not going to. He's never going to fail you. Ding, 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 ding. Let's stand to your feet, guys. He's never going to fail you.